Hello, dear viewers, students, teachers, and everyone that is watching this lesson. My name is Mr. Caleb Nyakundi. I am a teacher of English. I teach at Shamrock International School, and it's my pleasure to join you in our English lesson for today. And today we are looking at still writing, and we are going to do writing the whole composition. So welcome. Have a piece of paper or a book and a pen and take some notes. Write as much as you can, because today I have prepared you the last part of the lesson which I began last. And last I had taught you about paragraphing, and today, with the knowledge of paragraphing, I'm going to take you through writing the whole composition. You can also send your comments and questions through the number that is displayed on our screen. So, dear students, about writing the whole composition, a composition basically has three parts when you use a classical structure. The three parts are the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. But I'm going to take you step by step on how you should draft these three main parts of a composition. And we are going to start with the introduction. But before the introduction, in the writing process, there is no writing that happens in a vacuum. So you have to plan very well. Writing has to target a specific audience. So the audience then determines your tone of writing, your style, and your structure. So for writing in our school and for academic, we use the structure, the classical structure of an essay that I told you before. Before you write, dear students, whenever you're given a composition or an essay to write, whether fiction or non-fiction, the first part of writing is usually planning. Planning is a very key component of writing, because without planning, then you will not write well. You need to gather all the facts, all the information, the ideas about the subject of your writing before you start to write. In an exam situation, I usually recommend that a student should dedicate at least 5 minutes before beginning to write, to just think and plan and focus on the idea and explore it before beginning to write. So the first step in planning is developing an appropriate topic. A topic can also be referred to as a subject. A topic is the reader's first impression in your piece of writing, in your paper, in your essay. So there are several strategies of developing a nice and appropriate topic. One of the ways is I usually tell students that a topic shouldn't be too long. Short and brief topics always capture the reader's interest the best. I suggest that a topic should not be more than 6 words, because within 6 words or less, you can actually derive or communicate whatever you want to communicate. An example of a newspaper headline. That is a perfect topic to pick as an example. I have never seen one that has more than 6 words. Maybe the first topic sentence, that one can have more than 6 words, but the headline itself can even be as short as 1 word. Same to titles of various books. Even the set books that you are reading in your schools currently for the literature, those set books when you look at their topics and their titles, very short, either 2 or 3 words. And there is a style used in writing topics. When writing topics, one of the styles that you can use is alteration. Alteration is a repetition of sounds. The repetition of sounds in especially a sequence. When you're writing a topic, let me give an example of a topic. Let's say we are writing a topic and we are writing about pride and prejudice. Pride and prejudice. What you realize about this phrase here is that it has alteration of the sound p, pride and prejudice, or black beauty. Black beauty also has an alteration. Alteration makes topics have a very good effect and create a very nice impression, especially with your reader. And if you are going to use alteration in developing your topics, you're going to find out that your topics will be really good. Another style that you can use to develop topics is twisted cliches. Twisted cliches. An example of a twisted cliche is like the right, wrong stuff. The right, wrong stuff. So it's saying right and then it's saying wrong in the same. So it's twisted and it's a cliche. You can use such to write your topics. You can use the styles. Alteration is one style you can use. A twisted cliche is another style you can use. I am aware that in the junior secondary, you have already learned how to use proverbs in writing topics. It is not one of the best because they are obvious. When you use a proverb to write an essay title, yes, the proverb may be relevant, but then you need to think of creativity. You can be more creative than that. Everyone else can use a proverb as a title. Now, that is why I'm teaching you different other styles of developing appropriate titles. Another style you can use to develop an appropriate title, dear students, is use of questions. And these questions are rhetorical in nature. So they don't need answers. But within the essay, this question is going to be answered. And an example of a question you can use is, who killed John and why? Who killed John and why? So when your reader reads such a title, they will develop curiosity to read the essay to find out who John is, why he died, who killed him, and the reason. So questions are one of the best ways also of writing titles of essays, which I don't see many students use. In planning your essay, at the planning stage, the first 5 minutes of that 40 minutes or 1 hour that you've been given to write the 500-word paper, consider your purpose, your audience, and the occasion. Consider 3 things: your purpose, your audience, and the occasion. And when you consider those 3, why are you writing? To whom are you writing? And the occasion in which you're writing. Those 3 will determine the tone. The tone is simply the words, your choice of words in that essay. Your choice of words will be determined by the purpose of your writing, for instance. There are two types of writing. There is the non-fiction piece. There are non-fiction pieces, and there are also fiction pieces. Those two have different purposes. Non-fiction writing is where we write about real things that happened, or real things that can happen, arguments, okay, opinions. But in fiction, it's just for entertainment. So I could say that in nonfiction, the purpose is for you to express your ideas, to express your opinions, to argue out, to support. So you have to write in a persuasive way in order to persuade your readers to agree with your opinion. And that is the purpose. Then in fiction, the reason we write fiction, and mostly in the kind of essays that you have been writing are fiction in nature. But now you are getting into non-fiction essays as well. The fiction essays purpose is majorly entertainment. You are writing this to entertain your readers, number one. Then not just entertainment. Inside the entertainment, there is usually some values, there is education, there is something to learn in the entertainment. So you have to write with style. That is where now you have to use the style you've been taught in literature. Alteration, simile, metaphor. That is where you use proverb. That is where you put to practice all the styles that you've learned. So consider the purpose in your planning stage. In your planning stage, there is something important called listing that I want every student to get today. Listing, boys and girls, is creating an outline. Creating an outline. An outline of your composition. You create an outline of your composition by asking yourself the journalist's questions. Journalist questions are usually 5 W's and 1 H. 5 W's and 1 H. So, this is also, the journalist questions are also called the pented. So, this is the strategy where you ask yourself as you write down. So you ask yourself, for instance, who is in this story? Then you write there who is in the story in form of sentences or in form of bullet points like that. That is how to create an outline. You can do this as rough work, maybe behind your composition or essay paper at the page that you will not use, or get another plain paper and write there your outline. Your teachers can always allow you, and even in the national exams, students, the papers that you're given has around 5 pages. Examiners don't expect that you fill the whole 5 pages as long as you remain within the length of the expected length of your essay. So that is where you create your outline. The first question is who. The second question is what. Then when, where, why, and the 1H is how. The pented considers the 5 dramatic aspects of a story or of a subject. What tells you about the act. So which act was it? Who tells you about the actor. And then what, where tells you about the scene. And when tells you about the time when this action occurred. How answers on the conditions under which the event occurred. So by asking yourself the journalist question or the pented, you get to develop a clear outline to use in your piece of writing. Do this before you start writing, and trust me, you will have a very easy time writing. So this all in the planning, it's like sharpening the axe before you start now cutting down the tree. So let's now learn how to cut down the tree after we've sharpened our axe. And my dear students, the first part I said of a composition is introduction. Introduction is very, very key. Introduction is very key. Most of the teachers and examiners, like myself, judge your piece of writing by the introduction that you write. By just reading your introduction, I will know whether your piece of writing is worth reading and spending time on or not. And here is why. Introduction arouses the reader's interest and indicates the subject and the tone of the composition. So, an introduction must be captivating. And this is how to make it captivating. Strategy number 1, start with an interesting fact. You must not use all the strategies in one piece of writing. An interesting fact. An interesting fact, this is what I mean. It must be a fact about your story, about your subject. So this is what you're going to do. An example I have given, and you can read it on your screen. 28% of the occupations that will be available to children born in 2000s were not in existence when those children were born. Wow. An interesting fact. This is an introduction for a non-fiction piece of writing. You give an interest, even for fiction essays, you give an interesting fact. There is a book I read, and this book is about the Rwanda genocide. So the author, who is called Professor John Habwe, starts by writing in Swahili that he was 12 years old when a genocide happened in his country, Rwanda. When you read that first introduction and the way he captivates and the facts that he brings out in the introduction, you want to read the 300+ page book without a break. Why? Because of an interesting introduction. Strategy number 2, begin with a question that the composition will answer. Begin with a question. But I suggest that you don't begin with a question if you decided to write your title in form of a question, because now that will be redundance. So it will be perceived like you don't have many style of writing. So you are repeating question because question is the only style you know. You have in style, students, the key thing is variety. You need to know and you need to use and apply variety of style. So don't write 5 proverbs in one piece of writing which is only less than 500 words. One proverb could serve better. so that in the other paragraphs you write different style. So with style, the more the merrier. So begin with a question. Imagine if you could travel anywhere right now, where would you go? Well, when I was presented with this dilemma last holiday, and I don't regret my choice. You have started with a question. You're asking the reader a question, and then you're telling them you don't regret, you are presented with the same dilemma and you don't regret the choice you made. A question there that is immediately arresting the reader's interest in your work. Another strategy that you can use is an anecdote. Anecdote is very simple. So it's giving an information that is interesting. It's like a sneak peek, and a piece of a small information that is interesting. What is interesting in the whole essay? So it's called an anecdote. An example is given. It was during the December holidays when my family embarked on a long trip across Africa. When you just start with and open with such a statement, your reader immediately wants to continue reading until they find out what happens or what happened in your journey across Africa. They want to find out the challenges you incurred in that journey. They want to find out whether you are successful in carrying out the journey, which is actually a daunting task. Then, dear students, you can also use an appropriate quotation. You can quote. You are allowed to quote in the introduction. For instance, it must not be a quotation from a book, but you can also choose to do that. You can also choose to do that. And I'm going to give you a warning on this quotation, which I see many students fail on. All students study for the revolution and not just for grades, declared Liu in a quiet yet firm voice. Maybe Liu is the school principal, and you are now quoting. And when you're using quotation, you must be good at punctuation. You must know how to punctuate using quotation marks. It's a lesson I have done here before in KUTV, which is available on our YouTube. So about punctuation and about specifically use of quotation marks or speech marks. So you quote, open the quote, then you say, all students study for the revolution and not just for grades, declared Liu in a quiet yet firm voice. What the quotation does is the same to the other techniques or strategies, capturing the reader's interest, because that is what you need for your introduction to be successful. So after you've done this, and don't use all the strategy, all the 4 strategies. You pick one, you apply. Maybe the others you can apply them in different essays, but you cannot use all of them in one essay. That will be too much. They say that too many cooks spoil the broth. So, a warning about the quotation. I see students quoting or maybe defining, here in the quotation, giving a definition. And then when they are giving they give a definition of maybe the title, especially in non-fiction essays. For instance, you have been told to write about the environment. And then a student starts by saying that environment, or according to Oxford Dictionary, environment is defined as. Don't do that. you are now not being original. You are just copying or lifting works from Oxford Dictionary to your essay, while you are supposed to be original in your essay. That is not allowed. That makes your writing boring, because already you are telling the reader that I actually don't know, I actually can't define environment myself. But if I read in the dictionary, then this is what I find. So if you need to give a definition, especially on such argumentative essays, you give a definition that you have crafted yourself. Then it shows your readers that actually you have an understanding of your subject. Because if you don't have an understanding of your subject, then dear students, nobody is interested to read your works. So make a list, and after that, go to the introduction. An introduction can be short as one sentence. It can be long. But in an essay, you shouldn't bring anything else in the first paragraph. And I need to emphasize this. In the first paragraph of your writing, students, the only thing that a teacher expects to see is the introduction of your composition. Don't start giving the details. Don't start giving the story. The story can wait until the second paragraph or even the third. Build enough enthusiasm and an appetite for someone to read your work. Don't just immediately at the introduction or at the first paragraph of your piece of writing start giving the details. The nitty-gritties will come in the subsequent paragraphs. So, after you've written the introduction, now you go to the body. And the body is basically what I had already taught in paragraphing. So in the body, students, what is key is supplying information as much as possible to the satisfaction of your reader, not to the feel of your paper, but to the satisfaction of your reader. You can feel the paper, and you can feel the paper or even a book, but your readers are still left with questions, meaning you are not a good writer because you are not able to supply information to your reader's satisfaction, even though you used many words. There's a difference there, and a big one. You can write a very long or lengthy essay, but then you fail to capture the important details which your reader is looking for. When I say I'm writing about the environment, and that is a non-fiction argumentative essay, for instance, what my reader will be looking for is at the definition first of environment. And I said, don't quote. Define it. Give examples as much as possible. Then write in a structure of cause and effect for non-fiction compositions. You show the cause and the effect, especially for such a composition about maybe our environment. So, talk about how the environment is crucial to mankind. Then talk about how mankind is not very keen on conserving the environment. Give the effects of this. That is now called cause and effect. The effect of neglecting our environment. After that, in your conclusion, you are going to draw your readers to an agreement to conserve the environment. Once you do that, and if someone reads your piece and after that they are challenged to start conserving the environment, then you have achieved your purpose. Then you're a good writer. But if you finish your composition and still your readers are left with questions, too bad. It means you left some key details out. So in the body, supply enough information, paragraph, comma, paragraph by paragraph. What I mean with paragraph by paragraph, dear students, is what I said in my previous lesson, that a paragraph represents one main idea. So as you, in your outline, all the ideas that you list there, if they are different, they are going each to fit in only one paragraph, well supported, even in fiction stories. So paragraph by paragraph. You don't supply all the information in one paragraph, then the other paragraphs you have nothing to say. So you supply the information bit by bit, or paragraph by paragraph. Now we move to the last part of writing the whole composition. Not really last part of your composition, but in the structure of the composition, this is the structure of the composition, but not in your writing. In your writing, this is not the last step. It is actually far from last. So in your structure of writing, the last thing you draft is a conclusion. But I have said that a conclusion is not the last step of your writing. So a conclusion summarizes the main points. It's a summary of the main points, especially for nonfiction essays. But for fiction essays, in the conclusion, what you do is you have a call to action. Remember, I said that main points, I started by telling you that you have to have clear and main points. And these are the same points now you conclude, and you conclude them with a summary. In a fiction piece of writing, where you're writing a story that you've just made up, how to conclude? You can conclude by giving a lesson. The education part now comes there at the conclusion. That is why it's underscored. That's where you hit it in the conclusion. It's where you drive the point home. All the other paragraphs are yours to entertain the readers, but the conclusion is where you now have to nail it. This is the point I was trying to drive home with all the entertainment, with all the writing. So, first, direct readers' attention to larger issues. Direct your readers' attention to larger issues. Larger issues, for instance, let me give an example that I can explain. That night, this is our conclusion. That night, I thought hard and long. Could hard decisions in one's youth lead to a better future? For me, this was an awakening. without reading the story, if I read that conclusion, I have already picked a lesson. I have already picked a point. And this is from a fiction kind of writing. So the writer is talking about a certain night, and we don't know the circumstances. But then he summarizes it down, and it boils down to one point, that it left a mark. Whatever the actions or the circumstances of that night, they left a mark in the reader's mind. And therefore, the reader decides that hard decisions in one's youth can actually lead to a better future. And that to him is an awakening. That is one of the ways of driving your readers to larger issues. The issues that were happening in the composition or in the essay were not as large. But the main and the large issue is that you can make, if you can sacrifice to make hard decisions in your youth, then maybe you stand a chance to have a better future. So that is the conclusion. Then that is the first strategy to writing conclusions. Another strategy to writing conclusions, dear students, is encourage your readers to change their attitudes. Encourage your readers to change their attitudes or alter their actions. An example is here from a book, a story actually written by Barbara Brown. It's called All the Poor Patriots. And the conclusion, one of the first sentence in the last paragraph of the book says, consuming less, conserving more. The poor are the good citizens of this country, but not by their own choice. This sentence serves to change the perception of the readers to the poor in the community. So he praises the poor. From the title itself, All the Poor Patriots. And look at that title. Remember what I told you about titles? Alteration. And from that title you can prove now, All the Poor Patriots, poor patriots. Alteration, repetition of sound P there for the title of that story. Interesting. So the writer is now changing people's attitudes, and so that people can start seeing the poor in a different and better way than they are seeing them already. About the environment, the example that I gave at the conclusion is where now you drive your readers towards a change of action for the better. That is where you nail it now, and that is why you tell them and you urge them in a statement to conserve the environment. The other strategy, the third strategy of writing conclusions, is summarizing the main points, especially if it's a non-fiction essay. So there's an example of an introduction here from a book by Margaret Mead and Rhoda Matrix called The Gift of Autonomy. To all our giving carries with it messages about ourselves, our feelings about to whom we give, how we see them as people, and how we phrase the ties of relationship. You can see some main points there. One is giving carries messages about ourselves. When you give, it says something about you. That's number one. And what does, not just messages, but also our feelings. The second one, our feelings about to whom we give. And third, how we see them as people. And fourth, how we phrase the ties of relationship. The 4 points were probably explained in length in the essay, and now they have been summarized to draft a conclusion. So those are some of the strategies that you can use to draft conclusions. Again, in the conclusions, you can write your lessons in form of proverbs. Now, here you are allowed, because what proverbs do is, proverbs are wise sayings that are meant to warn and to give lessons. So maybe here in the conclusion you can say, that is when you came to a realization of a certain wise saying, and you say, or you quote the saying. So if you do this, you are now close to writing or to finishing your composition, but you are not done. There are some more important steps that you need to take after the conclusion, after writing down your conclusion. Usually, when you are writing, we say in writing that you have to write at least 2 rough drafts before you can write the clean draft. And that is now in professional writing. For instance, if you want to write a storybook, you write 2 rough drafts before you can actually write a clean copy. So, and I know this is also a skill tested in the grammar, where you are given maybe some explanation, a paragraph, and you're told to summarize it. So, and you are sometimes asked you are given 2 spaces, one to write the rough, and then the second one to write the clean copy. And most students think that the rough space or point, it's not important. You have to write that rough for you to get a clean copy. If you don't do that, your teacher will just see that the rough side is empty, it's blank, but the clean space is filled. So how did you arrive at the clean without having first writing the rough? So you consider after finishing writing your composition as a rough draft. But because you are not allowed, you are not given, because of time limitations, you are not given another paper to start writing all over again. What you are allowed to do is to revise your composition. So that there are 3 steps after the conclusion. And the first step is revision. Revision. After you revise, you edit. So there is editing. And after editing is proofreading. Revision, editing, and proofreading. That is the final stage. Proofreading is the final stage. So after conclusion, you revise. Then after revising, you edit. Then after editing, you proofread. To revise, dear students, just basically means to see something again. So if you had read a book and you want to read it again, then you are reading it for revision purposes. If you had learned, for instance, if I've taught you composition today, and then you want to go back home and try and go through my notes, then that is called revision. So you take a look at the draft, and not just looking at it, but try to rethink it. To rethink it means try to challenge your own ideas. Challenge your own ideas by maybe saying, is this really the best I could? Is this the best way I could put this kind of sentence? Is this the best choice of word? Can I find a better vocabulary to use? So in revision, you need a pencil and a rubber. And that's why your teachers still encourage you to use pencils and rubbers. However, as you continue, it becomes, it's actually, the option is no longer on the table. You have to write your essays using a pen. And here now, still, even when you are writing using a pen, it is important to revise your work. What you can't do is you can't rub, but you can proofread. So, and it can even help you for future to be keen. When you have an outline before you start to write, it helps you to minimize the errors. So when you are editing, what you're checking out is the grammatical errors. For instance, punctuation, spelling mistakes, transitions, using connectors from one paragraph, from one sentence to another. Maybe you were to write opening speech marks, and then you wrote this, and then you wrote this. That is the opposite. Then that is where you go back and now write them well the way they are supposed to be, the inverted commas, in editing. So editing helps you to go through your work. There is no piece of work, no best writer in the world that has ever written a book without it being edited. I don't know, maybe there is one, but I'm not aware of. But I am sure that every piece of writing that is published is first revised, edited, and proofread several times. How about your essay? And you want to maximize on the marks that you want to score. Then, after you have edited and you have checked the mistakes, you check also the choice of words. There are some vague statements. A vague statement is a statement that doesn't bring out the correct meaning. For instance, here is a vague statement. I have trouble making decisions. That is a vague statement. It leaves more questions than answers. Why do you have trouble? Which kind of decisions? This statement can be made better by saying, decisions involving money are difficult for me. It's now clear. Now, there'll be no question. It answers all the questions. So it's not vague. Then, dear students, after proofreading, after editing your work, now you need to do what we call proofreading. In proofreading, you start from the introduction. You read your work slowly by slowly. Assume you now put on the shoes of the reader. Let your work also entertain you. So you start reading your work from the introduction to the conclusion. More often, you read some work a student has written, and you find out there are very many careless mistakes. Then you wonder as a teacher, did these students really take time to go through this kind of work? So when you proofread your work, at least you put yourself in the shoes of the reader, and you will find out any mistake that you did and have a chance to correct it before you submit it. So remember this, a clean paper and a neat paper makes your work to stand out, and it also makes your ideas more credible. They even get trusted. So if, for instance, I made a mistake here at writing the word revision, then I come and do this. No, people will not want to look at my work. it will look dirty and it will not create a good impression. Part of writing, we write to impress. We write to impress, and we also write to express. So we both seek to impress our readers and also to express to them what is in our minds. So dear students, I would like to maybe check if there is any question or comment about our lesson today, because that brings me to the end of our lesson today. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you've learned about writing. So, in case of any question, remember our number is on the screen. You can always send your comments, send your questions. And if you missed any past lesson, remember that it's available to you on the KUTV YouTube channel. So until next time, dear students, I have been your teacher, Mr. Caleb Nyakundi. See you, enjoy your holiday, and take care. Thank you.